Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, GL Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's July 14, 2022 revised order extending remote participation by all members in any meeting of a public body. This meeting of the Great Barrington Select Board will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and our parties with a right and a requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. Pursuant to MGL 7C 30A, Section 20F, after notifying the chair of the public body, any person may make a video or audio recording of an open session of a meeting of a public body or may transmit the meeting through any medium. At the beginning of the meeting, the chair shall inform other attendees of any such recording. The town is recording this meeting, as is the Berkshire Edge and the Berkshire Eagle, as well as other members of the public. Any member of the public wishing to speak at the meeting must receive permission of the chair. The listing of agenda items are those reasonably anticipated by the chair, which may be discussed at the meeting. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by law. Select Board's announcements, statements. Garfield?
I just wanted to let the board know, or the rest of the board know, we got 22 stores that are participating in the GB Day, so pretty excited about that. Hopefully our folks in our town will take advantage of what the good merchants of our town are doing for them, and it will be a successful day. So we'll see what happens, but kind of exciting.
Congratulations, Garfield.
Thank you.
Eric?
Nothing at this time. Thank you.
Ed?
Nothing.
Lee?
Nothing.
Town managers report. Do you have anything, Mark?
I do not. I'll cover everything one day. Thank you.
Perfect. Next is the Housatonic School request for proposal opening process and timeline. Guess we'll start with the opening of the bids, and all we're planning to do tonight is name the 4 bids that were submitted to us. No detail. We haven't opened them yet. They will be posted on our website, and the select board will get copies of these. So the first one is Berkshire Innovation Center. And bear with me, we literally have not opened these. That one happened to have it on the envelope. WDM Properties LLC of Main Street in North Adams. Jeff Glickman and Elliot Fireworker, care of R. Rete, A-R-E-T-E, Venture Partners in Nanuet, N-A-N-U-E-T, New York. Elements Inc. Housatonic, Mass. So those are the 4 bids that we received. More details will come. Mark, you or Chris, you want to talk about the process and timeline?
I'm sorry, can you say that again, Steve?
Do you want to talk about the process and timeline?
Sure. I think what we'll do on the staff level is review all these to determine eligibility. We'll put them on a spreadsheet for the board. We'll get these proposals posted on our website, and then also print copies for the 5 of you, and plan to circle back in August, either at one of your regular meetings, if we can fit it into an agenda, or we'll have to schedule a special meeting to discuss next steps. Chris, anything else you want to add to that?
No, that sounds great, Mark. Just refer the board to the RFP itself. I believe section 9, 10, 11 describe the process, or is it section 12? I'm sorry, Roman 12 describes the process. The board could interview all 4, or assuming all 4 are eligible and have met the threshold requirements, the board could interview all 4. The board could choose to whittle it down further and then interview. So I think Mark and I will work at that on the staff level, determine the eligibility, and bring it back to you to see what's next.
Any questions from the board? Moving ahead, Main Street pedestrian safety improvements. Let me just give you a little recap for those who maybe didn't hear our meeting or didn't understand. There were a number of incidents on Main Street have been over the years, and we've asked traffic engineers to come back with some proposals for pedestrian safety improvements. At the last meeting of the board, I believe it was, or the meeting before that, we took a vote to do the following. That was to put high intensity crosswalks on both Railroad and Rotary Way. On Railroad Street, on the
High visibility?
high visibility, I'm sorry, yes. On Railroad Street, on Main Street opposite Railroad Street, put a raised island, and there would be 3 flashing lights there for pedestrian safety, 1 on either end and 1 on the island. And then opposite Rotary Way, which is near Car Hardware, we voted not to put the raised island, but to put 2 of the flashing lights, all for pedestrian safety. That vote was 5-0. One of the select board members has asked us to reconsider. So we're not going to take a lot of time tonight, but I wanted, if we're going to reconsider, it'll take some work. So I wanted to at least bring it up tonight and decide if we are going to reconsider. Whatever project we do on Main Street, just want to make sure everyone understands, has to be approved by the state. So it's not just, we're going to go ahead and do this. There will have to be approval by the state. So Lee, do you want to just take a couple minutes and tell us why you asked to reconsider?
Sure. Mark, could I share my screen? Because it might be easier for me to talk a couple of slides through.
Sure. Just give me 1 minute here. You should be good to go.
Okay, can you see my screen?
No.
No.
Oh, you can. Okay, let's try again. It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Okay, try it again.
So while Lee's doing that, the music you hear in the background is the Eagles trombone band at the gazebo. So when our meeting's done, you might be able to make the end of that because it sounds really neat.
Is my mic picking it up here?
I think both of ours are.
All right, let's try again.
Here we go.
Okay, here we go. I put together a couple slides. I thought maybe it might be easier just to go through it. And some of them are images.
Lee, what you told me you were going to put up was just what the raised islands look like, not dramatic slides of one person getting hit.
Well, I was just going to go through the context of it, but I can go through.
Yeah, that's really not necessary.
Okay. So what I'm hoping to do is reopen discussions, as you mentioned, and if that is permitted, to invite Beta back for a further discussion. One of the main reasons why I'd like to reopen discussions is I'd like to consider something called a road diet, which is moving from a 3-lane configuration to from a 4-lane configuration to a 3-lane configuration. So that is one of the main reasons. And also I felt that our discussions and our vote, looking back on it, it was a bit confusing with amendments. And I felt that coming back to what we actually voted on and what the experts had recommended would be a good step for us. When I talk about the road diet, what that is a configuration that is used for traffic calming. And essentially right now what we're looking at, this is Main Street aerial view, is we have a 4-lane configuration in downtown. And so what has happened is when we come from, let's say, Stockbridge Road from the north into downtown, it's 1 lane. And when we get into downtown, into the core, where the most pedestrians are around Elm Street, then it fans out into 2 lanes. And what's happening is a lot of the crashes that are happening are a result of a blind spot that happens with the 2 lanes. So these are the crosswalks as they are now. And what a road diet is eliminates 1 or more vehicular lanes. It repurposes roadway space. So you'll see on before we have the 4 lanes, 2 lanes each way. And afterwards, what it does is it creates a narrowing so that there's 1 lane in each direction with a middle lane, which is a safe space. So what the problem is that most of the accidents have been caused by, unfortunately, is a blind spot that's caused by having 2 lanes traveling the same direction. So as you can see here, car A stops to let the pedestrian cross, and it masks car B, obstructing the pedestrians and cars B's view of another. I had met with the engineers yesterday on Zoom, and I also had a discussion with an emergency responder today who didn't want to go online yet, but what he did say was that 90% of the accidents, in his opinions, are caused by this 2-lane configuration. And so what I'm honing in on is a concern about this 2-lane configuration, and suggesting that we go on a road diet that narrows the configuration in town. So again, this is another way of looking at the visibility, how someone, when they are crossing, that the second car coming cannot see them, and then there's the potential for an accident with the driver field of view being blocked by the other car. Some of the safety benefits, as I mentioned, reduced pedestrian crash risk is really the main one. Looking at this road diet, these are some of the safety benefits that have been discussed. This is another example of a road before. You can see 2 lanes in each direction. And afterwards, you can see with the road diet, you have 1 lane going in each way and a safety lane in the middle. So this is an example of what it might look like. And again, I realize that there's a lot of steps. And one of the reasons why I'm hoping to reopen discussions is that we could discuss this. I did ask several questions regarding this during my meeting with the engineers yesterday. And I think that there's an ability to ask more questions and to see, was this ever actually brought up? I'm aware that when the Main Street reconstruction was done, that the Mass DOT was focused on moving cars quickly from A to B, and pedestrian safety was a secondary concern. And what I am advocating for is that we have this opportunity to put pedestrian safety first. And I would like to consider this. And this road diet is one option that I think is the safest option. We didn't go with the option that the experts recommended. And this got me into looking at other measures. And especially when talking to emergency responder and seeing how the accidents have been caused with this blind spot, that's where I got into the road diet. So looking at the plan that Beta had showed to us, I made kind of a real poor attempt at seeing, showing what this might look like. And what this would let us do is that we would have this safety lane in the middle, and this would allow the safety, the emergency responders to use that lane if they had to. It would increase pedestrian safety because they would only be crossing one lane. There wouldn't be the blind spot. And we would still be able to have these protected medians in the middle for the islands as they were recommended by Beta. So essentially, we're addressing the blind spot. It's a traffic calming measure that has been used. And what I will stress is that we're talking only, sorry, I'll go back here. We're only talking about 300 feet. So that this isn't a big span that we're talking about. And as I mentioned, when we come into town, it's one lane anyways coming from the north. And it's almost nonsensical and counterintuitive to have the lane split into two right at the most dense part of Great Barrington. And what it does is it gives drivers the signal that they can speed up and they can pass. And what's happening is as soon as that spans out into two lanes, that's exactly what they do. They start to speed up, they start to pass, and that's when we have the issues with the accidents and the blind spots. And the most heavily accessed spots are these two crosswalks, so they're not signaled. Now, I understand that we are going to be increasing the visibility with the crosswalks, but we wouldn't be addressing this blind spot. And that's why I am stressing reopening this and asking Beta about this. Now, I know that there's a transition period that if we extended it from going from one lane to two lanes, that you would need to make sure that you had that if it continued past Railroad Street. So that would be one of the examples of the questions that we would ask Beta, but I would like to ask them. Wrapping up real quickly, proven results, 4 to 3 lane road diets, 19% to 47% fewer crashes. There's an interesting pilot program that Reading, Massachusetts did that they did the same thing. They actually looked into this road diet. They went from a 4-lane configuration to a 3-lane, did a similar safe lane in the middle, and they actually created a pilot project which they evaluated the response and the accidents and the traffic congestions in a pilot program, and they ran this during the summer and fall.
So isn't that, just so I can understand
Sure.
this, because I'm not good at plans, isn't the picture you're showing right now similar to Route 7 and that's a turning lane?
Yeah, if you don't look at the arrows and stuff. What I'm really showing you is that there's a middle lane and that there's 2 lanes going different ways. So that's not the best way, but what they did do is the reason why I'm showing you is that they went from a 4-lane configuration to a 3-lane. And so really what I want to emphasize is this middle lane that's a safe lane. So in our case, going back, it would probably look something closer to this. It would still have the pedestrian median, and then it would have the safe, if you look at the orange lines in the middle, it would have that kind of safe space so that emergency vehicles could cross if they needed to, if someone was parallel parking and there was the backup, so you have that kind of ability if needed, but it's really focusing on getting rid of that blind spot. So it would probably look closer to this. And again, this is the really bad mock-up that I did, but I just wanted to give a sense of what it might look like. And then, there's questions about congestion and impact on residential areas, which are good questions. Real quickly, doing some research, there was a quote that I found that was interesting, and it says, as you can read here, oops, sorry. I was just moving my little thing so I could read it. While it seems intuitive that the solution to 3 lanes of gridlock is to spread the same number of cars over 4 lanes, it fails because of a phenomenon called induced demand. And so, not to kind of go too much about it, but basically what it says is, when you reduce traffic, you're kind of creating people to say, okay, if you're expanding lanes, you're letting people think that there's more lanes and that they could take advantage of it, and it actually brings more traffic to the roadway. So when people know that a particular route is congested, some of them will choose not to drive. And once you tell everyone that you've added more lanes, then the latent demand has an outlet at which the traffic jam returns. Now, obviously, this is all discussion that I was hoping to at least have the ability to have Beta come back and discuss this.
But why don't we start the discussion about whether we're going to reconsider or not?
Yeah. I mean, what I'm doing is I'm making my case why I think we should reconsider, because I think that by moving ahead and not having even a discussion with going with the experts' recommendation number 1, I would like to have a discussion again about that. But also, what's more concerning is I don't know if that has ever been considered, this road diet, and seeing that most of the accidents that are happening on Main Street are a result of this blind spot. That is something that I would like to have that discussion. So the reason why I'm going through this whole slideshow is that I think that there is an opportunity to ask more questions and to ensure that we've done everything in our power to ensure that there's pedestrian safety on Main Street. I think we started to make that movement, but I think there's more to be done. And so again, just to wrap up, I would like to ask the board respectively that we reopen discussions. So thank you.
Thanks, Lee. Anyone on the board have some suggestions, comments?
I just have a little concern about the bicycle lane being bigger, maybe being a problem for drivers. Sometimes the bicycle lane seems to get in the way. I also have concern a little bit about the middle safety lane, whether or not people will use it as opposed to the lanes that they should be in. And my final thing is, I think half of the problem, besides maybe being a blind spot, are people not paying attention. I was coming through the traffic the other day. We had stopped in the right-hand, the southern lane, and 2 people from the northern lane, where there was no blind spot at this point, because the person was coming the other way, kept going anyway. So I think we still need more driver education. And I'm afraid if we let this happen, maybe they're going to think otherwise and take advantage in an incorrect way. But I do think some of it is careless driving.
Any other comments from board?
Just 2 things I want to point out. One is when DOT did the Main Street reconstruction, they were not just concerned with moving cars from A to B fast. They quite a few improvements on pedestrian safety, and it's sort of, there are people who work there who spend their lives focusing on pedestrian safety. But the other is, we did take the advice of the experts. There was competing advice from different experts, and emergency services preferred the plan that we ended up adopting. And it was our job to listen to 2 different experts with 2 different proposals, and I thought we merged them together nicely.
Yeah. Eric, do you have anything to say before?
No, I guess not to repeat a bunch of stuff, but I feel that the decisions that we made great improvement on pedestrian safety. And I do, yeah, I feel pretty good about the improvements that we approved. Yes.
So I jotted some notes down, and I respect, your concern. But number one is the vote. I thought the vote we took was clear. I think there's a misconception, not by you, Lee, but other members who maybe didn't see the meeting, is that we voted to do nothing, and that's just not the case. And I'm not taking any public comment because this is really just about the board reconsidering. We've already had the discussion on it. So I was concerned from the beginning about creating a bottleneck. I think that's a major problem on Main Street. And just because I was involved in the Main Street project, and I'll repeat what Ed said, what I wrote down was pedestrian safety was not secondary on the Main Street project. So almost word for word. I think that what we voted on will increase safety tremendously. And I really have real concerns about going down to one lane in this road diet. But, so do I have a motion by anyone?
Can I answer to any of that, or?
Yeah, go ahead.
So to emphasize 2 points, we're talking 300 feet of additional one lane roadway. So we're not talking, miles. We're literally talking between one crosswalk and two crosswalks, both of which where all the accidents have happened. So we're not going to be creating so much congestion that we're going to be backing up traffic. We're literally talking 300 feet. The other thing I would say is the experts did recommend having an island at Rotary Way. And when I asked about having a mountable island, that was permissible. That was okay with the emergency responders. And I do remember Ken saying that it by not having any kind of island, just having markings, that is giving people, that could give people a false sense of security. So by not having an island, number one, which is what the experts had recommended, and number two, not narrowing it to one lane, which is another recommendation that we didn't take. That it's two different items that we did not follow the EMT. And the emergency responder said, there was a way around it. Don't have the beacons in the middle, which we said was okay. And we said that it could be a mountable median. So I would say that I feel that we could have had more pedestrian safety. But going back to the point of the road diet, in my conversation with the engineers yesterday and with this local emergency responder, what I think we're missing right now is road design. I mean, road design will, dictates how people drive. So, we can always say, oh, people aren't paying attention, or they're drinking coffee, or they have a child. But really, we're leading the pack. And if we give people a false impression that they can all of a sudden speed up when they're in downtown to go from one lane to two lanes, in my opinion, we're not doing our job. And, I don't want it on my watch, a fatality. And I'm not saying that's going to happen, but, all I'm trying to do is as much as I can. And I respect if the board doesn't want to go back on this, but I'm trying my best to raise this point, because I think that we're missing one of the major issues with accidents is this blind spot. And, I think that having a road diet is one way that we could tackle this. And I feel that this board and this town has not done enough. But I respect your, this board's decision. So
There was two plans given to us by the traffic engineers. There was two choices, just to point that out also. So do I have a motion? Lack of a motion.
I'll take a motion.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion that we reopen the discussions and ask Beta back just for further questions.
Do I have a second? For lack of a second, the motion dies.
I'll second for a discussion.
Okay, go ahead, Garfield.
My reasoning and rationale, and I know I spoke with you, but Stephen, the reason why I'm saying yes is because I personally want no more money spent than we need to. So I don't know if that's, and again, as I hearkened to many times, the road signals, et cetera, down at South Main Street where there were fatalities has not had any fatalities. That's my discussion. It's bringing back something I had said before, but I still believe that. I'm concerned about the town spending more money than we have to if we have a model that works. That's my point of discussion.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I guess just the one thing I'll say is, Garfield and I have been on for a little more than a year now. And this came before us twice, and it was started before we were on. So, I think we just, at this point, we've made some good decisions, and there's been time in here. So I think we just need to move forward with the decisions that were made.
Roll call vote. Garfield,
No.
Eric,
No.
Ed,
No.
Lee,
Aye.
and no. So the motion fails. Let's move on to the topic of the evening, which is priority planning. Mark, Chris?
Okay, so in your packet for this evening was an updated priority planning worksheet dated July 18th. And I'm going to just go ahead and share my screen now so that folks at home can follow along. Just bear with me here. Can everyone see that?
Mhm. Sort of.
Everyone can see that?
Yes.
Okay, so before I begin, I just wanted to mention that the lines highlighted in green are marked as such because they should be considered completed, but we didn't move them and won't until we're instructed to do so by the board. So we're gonna now walk you through them line by line. Unfortunately, we do not have a public works director at this time, so Chris and I are gonna do our best to cover those topics as well. So first on the list for this evening is Housatonic Waterworks. As you recall, we moved that to the top of the list at the conclusion of our January 31st meeting. I think that was the last time we discussed this. And while I wish I had something more significant to share, the comment section here pretty much says it all. We're holding regular strategy sessions with our attorney and discussing various options. And I'll continue to share updates with the board and with the public during select board meetings going forward. Chris, do you want to take the next one?
Sure, thanks, Mark. This is Chris. Hi, the next one there, which is row number 4 on the spreadsheet, but the second one in the list, affordable housing aging in place. As the board knows, this is something we've been talking about for quite a while. The planning board actually will be digging into a number of strategies. Excuse me while my dog barks at me. She wants to pipe in on this topic also. The planning board has been discussing a number of strategies, and we'll revisit those strategies this summer and fall, not just regulatory and zoning, but also financial incentives and organizational capacity of the town and working with our partners. The planning board is very aware that both the select board and the Affordable Housing Trust are also engaged in this issue. The planning board's more focused on zoning and regulations generally, and more approaching it from a bigger picture, housing supply in general. There she is, not just affordable. Excuse me. And the planning board will be digging into that. We'll be working closely with the Housing Trust. I know the Housing Authority is also going to be rejuvenated soon to look into ways the Housing Authority can help. So there's a lot going on here. Continued coordination is needed. We should discuss, as the Community Preservation Committee looks at their CPA plan for the coming year, additional grant options, applications that we can do. And then, as the board knows, obviously, we've dedicated a lot of the federal ARPA rescue funds to this effort. So we'll keep you informed as to how those affordable housing funds are spent.
Steve, I got a question. Are we going to go through these and then come back and discuss them, or are we having the discussion as we go through them?
I think it actually is easier if we do one at a time and discuss them at the same time.
Yeah.
Going back, and can I just go off topic for a second? Mark, I don't know if you saw the text, but the Du Bois committee can't get into their meeting. I don't know if you'll be able to do anything about that.
Okay, I am seeing that now. It would require me to jump off of this and sign out in order.
Which is a really bad time to do that.
Yeah, right. I'll plan to reach out to them after this meeting and see if we can get them rescheduled.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. So let's go through discussion one at a time. Which one, Eric, were you?
Yes, just affordable housing. I got number 2 or line 4. Just was wondering if we're gonna have correlating with all of them actually. So if we're gonna discuss them as we go through, or we letting everybody give us updates, then coming back.
No, I think it's easier if we discuss it as we go through.
Yeah, we'll give you, oh, sorry, Eric, we'll give you a high level summary of where we are, and then definitely open to the board's comments in terms of what other strategies we should look at, or should it remain a high priority, things like that.
So let's talk about affordable housing. That's the one you want to talk about, Eric?
Yeah, I just I have a few questions to Chris and maybe Mark as well. With affordable housing, and I know, Chris, you just mentioned the ARPA money and the housing authority, all those things. I guess I'm wondering, with the ARPA money, is there ways to, does it have to be through a place like affordable housing, or does the town have the authority to negotiate a contract with, say, a private developer to create affordable housing, or give them assistance to create affordable housing under a certain standard? Or does it have to be through a state agency or a federal agency situation like you've mentioned?
No, the town could operate and do that on our own without state or federal assistance. One of the this town has created Affordable Housing Trust, which is the main vehicle that this town would have to do so, either to work with developers directly or fund developers. You also have the Community Preservation Act. Under those grants, we work with developers who are creating affordable housing, and it could be any nonprofit, it could be any private entity, for profit or nonprofit, so long as they're creating housing that meets the affordable criteria of whatever grant money or assistance the town is giving.
Right, and so the town wouldn't be opposed to writing up a contract with a developer, like a one-on-one contract, I guess.
There's no regulation against that. Certain contracts and certain things do have to be approved by town meeting. Like if there's an affordable housing restriction, sometimes that has to be approved by town meeting, and interest in land. Although the housing trust can hold those restrictions, they already have that authority per their authorizing legislation. So that's what the trust is for. It can do things like that.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
We are meeting. Oh, right.
Go ahead, Garfield.
Yeah, I thought it was meeting. No, the Housing Trust Fund is meeting a little more often than we had been. We are focused on some of the ARPA money and garnering it, and we're still scraping, and still in the game, still fighting to get some monies to make affordable housing a reality. Of course, we have the Alden project, which will actually be homes. We started doing some things with construct. There's some talk about maybe Windflower being purchased, so for some workforce housing. So there's some things going on that we do have our hands in, if you will.
Good to hear.
The trust has a pretty busy meeting tomorrow night.
I had lost audio for a minute, so I apologize if I'm asking for a repeat of something. The select board sent a list of suggestions think, to the planning board to start looking at, and then to come back to this board, and which I believe originally probably mostly came from your head, Chris. So I assume that's on the list. Are you familiar? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it's a combination of regulatory and zoning type work, financial and incentives, and also organizational capacity.
And then the other is probably minor, but on this sheet at the end, it includes short-term rentals under affordable housing, which I think we separated out as a separate issue at the very end of comments and update.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Anything else from the board on the affordable housing? Well, clearly, we're leaving that as a priority. It's one of the decisions that, you know, if any of these we decide are complete or are no longer a priority, we can move them down on the list or off the list. But so far, I haven't seen one that's not a priority. So go ahead, Chris.
Ambulance service study is up next, and we seem to be headed in a positive direction with our local EMS service. They have a new director in place. They've been actively recruiting new EMTs and medics. Chief Berger continues to represent the town on their board of directors, so that's been really great. ARPA funds from all of the member towns, to the best of my knowledge, were donated to help fund the ambulance replacement for Southern Berkshire. GB alone contributed about $136,000 in ARPA funds, and no town subsidies were required or requested for fiscal 23. That's all I have on that topic.
Perfect. Cook's Garage. If anybody has a question, just shout it out or raise your hand. I'll assume there isn't one from the board. If so, we'll move on to Cook's Garage.
Sure, this is Chris again. So as you know, at town meeting authorized the select board to, dispose of that property. As you'll recall, that's 426 Park Street in Housatonic, just east of the Park Street Bridge. The town took it for back taxes, and we did some brownfield assessment there. At this point, I think the town should develop a list of revitalization goals for that site, and then determine exactly how to dispose of it, probably through an RFP process similar to the Housatonic School. I wonder, we haven't had the time or capacity to advance this since the last time we spoke, except for that town meeting vote, which was very important. But in terms of discussing the reuse goals for the site and how you might craft an RFP, we haven't been able to discuss that. I wonder if it's something you want to talk to the Housatonic Improvement Committee about, get some input there, open to some suggestions, how you want to proceed.
Chris, the Housatonic Improvement Committee did request at their last meeting to be involved in the Cook's Garage development, and I told them that would happen, similar to the Housatonic School. So you're dead on in that. So we should work with, I guess our liaison, if you don't mind, is probably Eric, if Eric doesn't mind, and work on getting that on the agenda, and then one of our agendas.
Sounds good.
Next up is COVID-19 public health emergency. And I don't have a lot to share this evening, but COVID cases seem relatively low at the moment here in Greater Barrington. Our task force meetings, which were taking place on Tuesday mornings, they're on hold at the moment, although we do continue to share information as needed with each other. I sent them an update earlier today, and I hate to suggest this because I've made this mistake once before, but I'm thinking this could be moved out of the high priority category now, mostly because it's not consuming the amount of staff time it did back in January when we last discussed this.
Does anyone have a problem with this, moving that to moderate or low priority? It's a little bit misleading. Obviously, if COVID comes back stronger, that's never going to go away, in my opinion. But if it just comes back stronger, we'll move it back up. But at this point, doesn't belong there for the reasons Mark just said. No problems with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, next on the list is the Housatonic Community Center. And this is also another topic I don't have a lot to update the board and the public on tonight, but all of the light fixtures were replaced with LEDs. I think that was something we provided in an update at the last priority meeting. That was mid-COVID, probably 2021. But the estimates that we received at that time for the installation, which is the second piece of that project, that work cannot be completed at this time because the estimates are just no longer valid. The cost of materials and labor has gone up beyond what we had budgeted for that project and what was granted to us from DOER. So we're going to have to work with BRPC and DOER since those grant funds weren't sufficient and see if we can perhaps get some additional funding from DOER or find additional funding elsewhere to move that project forward. So I hope to have better news at the next time we are having this meeting. For now, the meeting room at the Housatonic Community Center is functional. The Wi-Fi is up and running, and we will be adding some boosters to that. So hopefully free Wi-Fi will be available outside the building and throughout the building for farmers markets. And that room is usable once we return to in-person meetings.
I just have one question. With the grant money for the installation, is that something we have to worry about expiring or anything like that?
No, we don't need to worry about that money expiring. The challenge for us is that we can't complete this project with the remaining DOER grant funds, which means that we can't, until we expend this money, apply for any additional funds through the competitive cycle. So we're kind of in a bind right now, and we need some guidance from the state, and BRPC is going to help us work with them to try to get out of that bind. Any other questions on that line before I move on? Okay, Housatonic School. The roof was protected with a rubber membrane. That's noted in the comment section here. And there's really not, I think we pretty much covered this tonight already. We have 4 proposals, and staff will work to vet those proposals and report back to the board soon.
The next item is fiber optic to Housatonic. We were doing a study to see how much it would cost to take fiber optic up Stockbridge, up Park Street into Housatonic Village. What we call a middle mile of fiber, essentially. We're still working on that. We've got to continue negotiating with National Grid and Verizon, who own the poles, utility poles on Route 183 and Route 7, to determine exactly which ones need to be replaced. That's the major driver of cost. So if the pole isn't big enough or there's too much on the pole, then lines need to be moved or poles need to be replaced. And that's still in process to figure out what we can do. In some places, poles can be, we can go around poles, we can go underground if needed, but we just need to figure out what the route would look like before we have a feasibility cost estimate for you.
Do we feel that there's been any movement on that as far as are we getting closer to that time, or the utilities not being agreeable, I guess, or cooperative? Or
We are getting close. There was a time last year where things were very, very slow, but there's been some more activity and on-site meetings with them to discuss things in more detail. So I feel like we've been getting some good response lately.
great.
The next item is infrastructure generally, but including bridges, roads, sidewalks, etc. Division Street Bridge, if you haven't been there, the deck is gone now. And probably next week, the trusses will be removed. And once the abutments are stabilized, then a new replacement temporary bridge can be installed. So we're still generally on track for that project, which is good. We have paving out to bid. I'm sorry, we have paving awarded for the Berkshire Heights area. J.H. Maximilian will be paving Berkshire Heights, Barrington Place, Haley Road, Highland Ave, and Pleasant View, probably this summer and very early fall. So that's good. That's moving forward, and we're wrapping up projects from last year. We're also looking at special projects, including Lake Mansfield, parking lot, road, culvert area, as well as sidewalk projects, including West Avenue, Lewis Avenue, things like that, as per the capital plan that was approved at town meeting.
Any questions on that?
I just have one question. I know in past conversations with Sean, he was saying about, you know, the 5-year map of just upgrades to roads, and is there an actual document or an actual map of that and what we're hoping to accomplish as far as streets and areas?
We have a good look ahead plan.
Mhm.
And I don't have it in front of me, so I don't want to misspeak. I'm not going to share that off the cuff at the moment. We also have a good asset management plan in place that we spent a significant amount of time and money developing, which looks at all of the street infrastructure that the town owns, including the sidewalks, looks at the mileage, the width, the last time they were rehabilitated or reconstructed, you know, and it kind of projects out what costs would be per mile of road, depending on the type of project that would be needed. So for example, we could look at North Plain Road, figure out how many miles, what type of rehab project would be needed, and build that into our capital budgeting program. So we can share that with you. It's a GIS map, which we can keep updated. So that's a really good thing to have, and that helps us build our 5-year plan.
Great.
Anyone else on that? Go ahead, Chris.
The next item is Main Street pedestrian safety and traffic. So we'll move forward on creating the pedestrian island at the Railroad Street crosswalk and improving both Rotary Way and Railroad Street with the flashing beacons. The engineer will move forward on that. We'll keep you updated. We'll keep Mass DOT and Federal Highway updated as we need to. And the funding was approved at town meeting to actually make those improvements. So I can't give you a timeline for estimated construction, but we'll move as fast as we can.
Can I ask a question about the roundabout, since we're talking about traffic?
Good.
Okay. Will that be widened any? I have a little concern. It just seems like when you're coming from the north, if you have to go around the right, or actually if you're coming up from the south and you have to go around, that's a pretty close area to the police station. You're making that turn. I can see something not good happening.
Well,
Is
yeah.
the state that has that? Because I'd sure like to see some lights put up there sooner than later.
They're definitely not done. We encourage everybody to treat that as a construction zone, active site. Go slower than you normally would, so you don't end up in the chief's lap. Yeah, and use your blinkers.
Next item on the list is the Monument Mountain Regional High School entrance. And I think at the last meeting, the addition of what they refer to as a buffered right turn lane had already been completed and installed. And what that does is it allows for better visibility for of approaching cars for drivers that are exiting the high school campus. The next phase of this will be the addition of an intersection conflict warning system, and that project will be funded and completed by DOT. I don't have a timeline on that yet. I spoke to Superintendent Dillon earlier this week to see if he heard anything or has yet from DOT, and I haven't heard back from him, so I'm guessing the answer is no. But this is something that if it does move forward soon, I can share with the board and the public during a regular town manager update on our at one of our regular meetings.
Mark, did you say there was something built already right now at the high school? Is it, maybe I didn't go up there enough, or I'm not looking, but I can't tell what's different or what is different.
Yeah, they did add what they refer to as a buffered right turn lane. So they took some of that, a small sliver of green space along the front of Monument campus and added an additional lane so that anyone approaching the school from the south heading north was further in, allowing for folks exiting to be able to have a clear sight line.
I'll have to take a look.
Yeah, next time you go up there, take a look. You can see there's a difference in the color of the pavement in that area where that additional lane was added.
Thank you.
And the next item on the list here, parking, I have to admit, I don't have anything to share with you tonight about parking and efforts we've made towards improving parking downtown since the proposal to purchase and develop the parking lot on the other side of the railroad tracks failed at town meeting 2 years ago. Chris, anything you wanted to share relative to wayfinding?
No updates on wayfinding. We have not been able to advance that. We had hoped to apply for some grants this past year. We were not able to work that in to our schedules. I will note happily, as most of you know, the Taconic parking lot is finished. Obviously, the lights look good. The electric vehicle charger is back there and operating. It's been in pretty heavy usage, and we'll keep the board updated about that. We'll keep this on the list unless the board objects. We'll keep it on as a high priority. I know that people who visit town definitely need the parking, but also a concern that's being expressed is also that downtown employers who need extra staff and are growing also obviously need parking, and we'll have to figure out those concerns as the hotel develops at the old Searle School. That will take some parking away that's been used temporarily. So I think this issue will come up again sooner rather than later, and we'll keep it on our radar.
I have a parking question.
Eric, just let Eric had his hand up first.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Yes, I guess I just want to say I know after the town meeting in last year, I argued to keep it in the urgent high priority area. I do hear people from the town not wanting to deal with it and stuff like that, but kind of similar to what Chris was just saying, store owners, people are concerned about not only their employees but their customers dealing with parking. So I do feel that it is a priority, but I guess looking back on it and what I was saying last year, I'm not opposed to dropping it down a little bit in the priority list, just to give staff time to concentrate on other things, other more important things. But I personally feel that in the downtown area, we do have a parking issue. But
I have something to add or ask or say.
Of course, go ahead, Garfield.
Why have we not, or can we develop some type of card or system for the people that work in the downtown area? They have to go out and feed the meter every 2 hours. So I'm told. I don't work down there. They don't park down there. But is it 2 hours or every 4 hours?
It depends on the parking spot. There are different
Okay.
hour limits. But
Okay.
we do have those all identified on our downtown parking map. So there are 4 hour, 2 hour, 8 hour spots at the northern end of town. And there is at least one 24-hour lot at the top of Railroad Street.
Well, here's my thought. Whether or not these people are staying in these spots and going and feed the meters all the time, it's the same money. In other words, I'm saying that it doesn't matter if they get out and someone else comes in and wants to maybe it would be different because they want to shop. But these people work there. This is how they make their living. This is where they need to park. Why have we not come up with some system allowing them to have us park there for the fee or half or 3/4 of the fee that it would normally be daily anyway? How much would it be?
Garfield, I can answer that. There's no meters out there. What it is that where there's 2 or 4 hour parking, if you owned a store on Main Street and the store next to you had 3 employees all park in front of your store for 8 hours, then that could affect your business. So what we would like employees who are able to park a little further away, and that way they're not blocking prime spaces. That's really the reason for it.
Can I say something?
Of course.
I just wanted to add, I think the 60 spots that were added on the north end of town were added after, I know it was after the vote at town meeting failed, purchased the lot. And those are, I think, those are 8 hours, Mark?
Those are marked 8 hours, I believe. Yeah.
Right. So there is plenty of employee parking. You just got to convince your employees to walk from, I've timed it. It's a 4 or 5 minute walk from the furthest of those spots to Berkshire Bank. So there are spots where employees can park all day. And I've never seen those all full.
Anything else on parking? I hope that answered your question, Garfield.
That's good enough.
Okay, next on the list is the Ramsdale Library entrance and accessibility. And our architects, LLB Architecture, presented designs for a new accessible entrance at the Ramsdale to this board back in April. And we also invited library staff and the board of trustees to attend that meeting. Some of them did. I also attended a trustees meeting in June, I believe, May or June, to discuss this project with them. And we're just waiting at this time for some feedback before proceeding to the final design phase. They've been asked to provide that feedback no later than the end of July. So we're closing in on that now. And I just wanted to remind everyone that funding for this project was approved at the annual town meeting in June. So as soon as we move to final design, we can start to put this out to bid and move this project forward.
Terrific.
In terms of the Reed Cleaners project, as this board knows, we do have a cleanup grant from EPA, and the town will contribute some funds towards that through our capital budget. We do have a QEP, Qualified Environmental Professional. That's an environmental engineering firm that will develop the scope of work for the remediation. In other words, how much soil is removed from where, et cetera, and what needs to be done to protect both the groundwater and the soil and ensure future developability of the site. So they are working on that, albeit slower than we thought, because there is additional investigation, I'll call it, still to be done. A portion of the site that was not previously investigated in detail still needs to be looked at to determine how contamination got to that area and how, if at all, it impacts the cleanup scope. So we've asked EPA for additional funds to cover the additional investigation that we need to do. Long story short, I think we're looking at cleanup not starting until probably the spring of 2023, calendar 23. Right now on your sheet, it says early calendar 23. I think that's going to be pushed out a little bit. So we'll keep you up to date on that.
The next on the list is short-term rental regulations. And this topic is, again, marked as completed only because you, as a board, were able to accomplish getting a bylaw drafted earlier this year and approved at town meeting in June. We still have work to do on the staff level, of course, to prepare for implementation in January. We're working now to research pricing on compliance software options and to develop an application for hosts to register their short-term rentals in the new year. We'll also need to seek funding, as you recall, from the Finance Committee. This was not something we budgeted for during the budget process, not knowing whether the bylaw would pass ultimately or not for the compliance software, that is. And once we have a better idea of what those software prices look like, we'll be able to take this to the next step with the Finance Committee, request those funds, and move that forward. So I'm only suggesting again that this is completed because it's titled short-term rental regulations, and I think the board has completed their work. And now the next step is for staff to take it from here.
Many of these projects, although select board projects, I would dare say all of them, if not most of them, are done by staff. So could we just change the verbiage and leave this here? Just in shorthand what you just said,
Sure.
because it's going to take up a lot of staff time. So to remove it would be somewhat disingenuous to staff.
Yeah, we can do that. Any other questions or comments on that topic before we move on? Okay, so the next item is systemic racism proclamation. And this is another one that we marked as completed because the board did approve a proclamation back in 2020 that's posted on our website with your other proclamations. The one remaining piece here is that the trust policy committee was never formed. And that was only because we weren't able to attract enough volunteers to staff that committee. So we did, during 3 rounds of advertising, try to accomplish that, and that's been put on hold. So I was going to suggest that perhaps this one be renamed as well, since you've completed a portion of it and there's still a portion to be completed. So.
Yeah, I think renaming it is fine. I'm just toying with the idea of just moving it to moderate priority, just because we couldn't get people on it, and I'm not sure how much work we want staff to work on this as being urgent, or when you have time. So it would seem to me we want to leave it on the list. It's important, but I'm not sure it has to be high priority. Does anyone disagree?
I agree completely.
The only thing I guess I would say is that we make sure we don't forget it and leave it on the back burner.
I agree, Garfield. That's why I want to leave it under moderate. Absolutely, you're right.
So we'll go ahead and rename that and transition it to a moderate priority. Is the board comfortable with that?
I am. Anyone else?
I'm okay.
Good.
Okay, good.
Okay, the next item is the trip hazards on Main Street. We do have the funds to move forward with making some improvements where there are problem areas. I think as soon as we have a new superintendent of public works in place, we'll transition that project over. But at this point, we don't have anything else to share with you.
But we did get the funding, which is huge.
Yes.
So we're well on our way. So those are the high priority. So I would ask the board two questions. Is there anything under moderate or moderate priority that you want to discuss tonight? We're not going to go through each one of those, or anything that you want to add to the high priority.
Steve, do you mind if I touch on the green highlighted?
Absolutely.
priorities? And I don't need to do that now, but just at some point.
No, but go right ahead.
So down to line number 25 here, downtown pride, energy, marketing, and entertainment. I marked this as completed on this draft because we have a very active outdoor dining and entertainment program in place now. This is year 3 of that program. Our crosswalk project, and by crosswalk project, I mean our rainbow crosswalks. Crosswalks are cultural district flags, marketing. All of these efforts are ongoing, and I think that we have completed a solid portion of those efforts. And I noted ongoing because I don't think it should necessarily fall off our radar, but we've completed a great deal in the way of creating energy downtown over the past couple of years.
I had one question about the master plan. Was this the year that we were going to kind of move it to more of a high priority? Are we going to start? I wasn't sure what date, what year we were going to start really moving towards revising it.
Well, our note there indicates that we should discuss with the planning board this year. And then I think the best course forward would be for the two boards to determine, when you'd like to move forward with that, and then discuss how to do it, committees, consultants, funding, etc. So maybe this is something, in addition to the housing questions, that the boards want to meet in joint session about in the coming months.
So if it's something that we want to start this year, should we move it up to high priority, just so we know that there's something that we should make sure is done this year, or is it fine at the moderate?
By done, what do you mean by being done?
That we commit to actually beginning the process of revising the master plan, as opposed to saying, we're going to revise it. If we say, okay, well, this is the year that we're actually going to start taking the steps. Just more of a question. I mean, I'm fine with having it moderate, but I know that we had talked about, this year being the year that we begin the process. So. But moderate's fine for me. I just wanted to note that.
I think moving it up is fine with me, or leaving it where it is until we actually commence with the whole project.
Okay.
Line 34, the mission statement for the select board and the town, that was updated and approved by this board in June, so last month. So we marked that as completed. And then line 36, open meeting and public records trainings for boards. 2 trainings were held and open to all town board members and staff. The 2 dates were April 4th and April 12th. So I think we've completed that task as well. That's something that we should revisit again from time to time, but we've completed it for now.
So my question is, Mark, could we take that off this list and transition it to our calendar for like once a year to schedule these trainings?
We can move this to our annual operations calendar, and I can ask Jen Messina, our town clerk, to be responsible for scheduling those trainings. She was responsible for scheduling this first round. So I'll ask her if she'll continue to do that on an annual basis.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. Anything else the board would like to see moved up or discuss? Okay, moving ahead. This is really helpful when we see these projects. A little editorial, when we hear updates on this, it's really helpful to to know where we are. Sometimes we lose track of it, but I know you don't. But it's good for the public and good for the board to hear these updates.
We'll get this list updated and share it on our website soon.
Terrific.
Great work. Thanks to Chris and Mark.
Yes. So just so I can tell you, there were 17 attendees and 13 attendees and 7 panelists for a total of 20 people at the height of tonight's meeting. So we are at citizen speak time. Just raise your hand if you have anything to say. Ann Weil, go right ahead.
Yeah, good evening. What a surprise. I want to say something. Yeah, another thing on pedestrian concern and safety, I really want to apply a little pressure for you guys to focus a little more on a moral presence in terms of dealing with pedestrians and civilians. We have old people standing at bus stops with no shade in this convection oven heat. And I think if we must really address doing something about the bus stops, providing shade for those people who only have one form of transportation. It's cruel and unusual punishment, I think. What's your feeling about that?
Seems reasonable that we shouldn't let people be out there. That hasn't been brought to us before, and I hadn't thought about it, but we will look into that now.
Thanks very much. That's what I wanted to say.
Anyone else? Moving ahead, select board time. Garfield?
Nothing, thank you.
Eric?
Nothing at this time. Thank you.
Ed? Lee?
Nothing.
And I have nothing. Media time. By unanimous consent, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.